Joining us on the Heister Automotive Group hotline from Charlotte, he is contemplating life, contemplating the Carolina Panthers. He is Kyle Bailey, WFNZ. As Giulio joked when you just popped on, you look like Captain America. You sit down and you go, so you want to talk about the Carolina Panthers? And that's where we're at.
No, I'm sorry. It rained overnight here in Lake Norman, and I just walked out to talk to you guys without any thought of the fact that I have nowhere dry to sit. So I'm awkwardly standing here like a statue. But no, it's good to be back, gentlemen. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's awkward to talk about the Carolina Panthers right now because I think Panthers fans and Panthers media, we've been burned by 2 coaching searches, burned by the talking points from the organization, only for them to fail. And I think we're trying to be cautious about how we talk about this offseason, cautious how we talk about Dave Canales, cautious about Dan Morgan and the offseason moves. Is that the sense that you get when you're talking to the people in Charlotte when it comes to the Panthers offseason?
Yeah, I think they're pretty careful about messaging. I think the only guy who probably doesn't care as much about that, well, I don't know if that's true. I was going to say Dave Canales. I don't think he worries about what people think of him and his football team, but he's out there on social media. I do think a certain kind of messaging is important to him. But I think your point's a good one that, they're being very careful not to get too carried away with the big announcements and the excitement and everything else because last year was so bad. But, you notice that in the national media too. A lot of the same people who were touting them as a dark horse a year ago are now absolutely crapping all over the organization on TV every day. And, again, not unexpected. It's just, a funny contrast from last year to this year. So I think that way, the phrase I keep repeating on the air is that I am stoic and skeptical until I see some wins. And I think everybody should be that way. But I will say, and I'm sure we'll get into this, I like some of what they've done. And I don't think it's wrong to say that. So,
I mean, Jadeveon Clowney, that's the number 1 overall pick. That continues their trend of getting number 1 picks, right?
Yeah, but on what arc of his career?
Hey, at least he's not a quarterback.
Okay.
At least they didn't get the guy who was taken in the top 3 as a quarterback. So
fair
progress. Okay. Progress.
Yeah. That's one way to approach it. I mean, I like that he's back. I thought they really needed him. Once they got to a certain point in that second wave of free agency where it's like, okay, you got DJ Wanham. If that's your plan for your number 2 edge rusher, not bad at all, but you better find somebody else. And Chase Young ends up in New Orleans and, he's got a neck issue, which, I mean, they might have dodged a bullet there. But, at that point, it kind of felt like Jadeveon Clowney or bust or hope that somebody cuts a good player in camp. But, Jadeveon, he's coming off a career year in sacks. I think PFF had him as the 19th best graded edge in the NFL. I mean, you're getting a guy who's motivated to come home. And so I think it's a good deal all around. I don't know if they'll get spectacular Jadeveon Clowney or if they'll get Cleveland Jadeveon Clowney. I have no idea. But, if they get Baltimore Jadeveon Clowney, they'll be pretty happy with the deal they made.
It's not good for sports talk radio. And it's really not good, if you're actually trying to put the team back together in a splash. But my goodness, the Carolina Panthers have Bill Belichick's wet dream here. They have the 33rd pick and the 39th pick.
Oh, yeah.
And the 65th pick. Like, Bill Belichick wakes him up himself in the morning to those 3 picks. Are you kidding me? My question is, will it be Dan Morgan's fantasy to have those 3 assets?
God, I wish I could say wet dream on the radio every day. The number of phone calls I'd get if I said wet dream on the radio every day. I mean, you two know that life. So I know you appreciate it even more than ever.
Oh, yeah.
What was the question again? I lost you.
You lost.
I know it would be Bill Belichick fantasy to have those 3
Yeah.
picks. How do we think Dan Morgan?
Looking for football dudes.
Yeah.
That's where you find the dudes,
that's where you find
Joe.
the real value. But
yes.
How do you suspect Dan Morgan treats these 3 things? Because it does feel like, I mean, Belichick would trade out of 33. I mean, you know that for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But just how do you think they use those 3 assets? Because they have so many different needs.
Yeah, I mean, I know Joe Person talked about it earlier this week that he thinks Dan would be more inclined to trade down. The thing is, if you want to weaponize this offense and you're in love with somebody there at 33, man, you better know you could get him, those several picks later. Because you can get an impact player, a game changer right away at 33. So I personally kind of like the idea of picking where they are. I won't be upset if they trade back and it feels like they pulled off some magic. But the one thing I know they're not doing is going up. And I know Eric Edholm wrote about that earlier this week. And the possibility of going up to 29 to go get a wide receiver. I think it was Xavier Worthy out of Texas, but I think that's entirely unnecessary. And I think you're right. Belichick would do it. I'm not sure Dan Morgan will, but I know he's thinking about it because, they've brought in some talent, but they still need to lay – they need a better foundation. That has to be done through the draft.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I would look at and why I would look back. Yes, you can get somebody of value with that 33rd pick. I'm not disputing that. However, the Panthers, and
same with 65, Joe. Like, don't undersell 65.
Agree.
That third pick is important.
Which gets to the larger point, and I think this is one thing the Panthers might, without explicitly saying it, are in action doing. We're not trying to make this thing, we're not trying to go halvesies on this. Like, we're trying to rebuild, but we're trying to win now. We're trying to do this, but we're also trying to do this. I get the sense that this is a true makeover while trying to build around what they have to be invested in and make work while his rookie contract is still, workable for the salary cap. That is build around Bryce Young the best they can. So if I'm the Panthers, I try to get as many picks as I can and hope that one of these things sticks around. That's where I'm at with the Panthers. At least it's an admission through their action that, we got to clean the slate a little bit. We got to move on from stuff that just wasn't working out, even though we tried really, really badly to make it work.
Yeah, the thing is, I think you have to be prepared to do that deal. It's probably going to be a night 2 on Friday night type of thing that you're doing there because you have to watch how the board falls. I mean, we all know that on the draft every single year that matters. But, you have – it's a wide receiver deep class, but all of a sudden Kansas City went from needing 1 to possibly needing 2. Yeah. And they're picking a couple of spots ahead of you. So, if you think you can get a dude at 33 and you're afraid that Kansas City might go, just as an example, you might not be as inclined to trade back. So I don't know. I mean, it just depends on who you're in love with. And I don't even know that that's the right thing. But, if a team gets convicted on a player and a GM gets convicted on a player, good luck moving him off of that.
Kyle, I love it when people tell me I'm right. You're right. Kansas City. God, where would they be right now if they just had Tariq Hill?
You're right.
They had just held on.
Think of the imaginary Super Bowl that they won, right?
They won 2 Super Bowls.
But
yes,
true.
But think they could have won the Super Bowl by like 40 points.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like, what a mistake. Why would they get rid of that guy?
Crazy. They're still dealing with the repercussions of moving on from Tyreek Hill.
The butterfly effect.
You're right.
Ian McNeil missing free throws and Tariq Hill ended up in Miami. It's just the same thing.
I wanted to go back to something you said, Kyle, about how the national media is talking about the Carolina Panthers. And I think every sport needs a punching bag. And Dan Snyder is no longer around to be that easy punching bag. And I feel like David Tepper has assumed that role for just his own actions, like tossing the drink and whatnot. Their inability to get the coach right, their inability to potentially get the quarterback right. It's got to the point where Pat McAfee is even making a bit while they were at the owners' meeting, like, I don't think David Tepper likes me. Of course, that has something to do with Frank Reich, his connections to Indianapolis and everything else. The question that I have is did Tepper learn any lessons from last year? Will he keep a low profile? Will he not take the bait of having his team and himself dunked on throughout the season?
I don't think we'll know that until or unless they start winning, because his temptation will be to, once they start winning, assuming that happens, to jump out and be a part of it again. As you've noticed the pattern, the trend over the past couple of years that, when they've seemingly done good things, he jumps in front of the camera, right? at any opportunity to talk about it. After the Bryce Young thing, the whole we've got a point guard, we can save money on wide receivers. So I'm sure Joe loved that. But that was, it was funny, but it also kind of punctuated what we thought had become a trend of him. Okay, when they've seemingly done something good, he wants the camera.
Yeah.
When they don't, he doesn't. So I don't know. I think if they start to flash, they win some games early. Maybe we hear from him. Maybe we don't. I think he's learning. I mean, we've talked about the number of owners in the NFL that, it didn't start to click for them until years 5, 6, or 7, and learning the league, learning who they could trust, and all those sorts of things. So I don't know, Joe. We've talked about this quite a bit on my show. Like, just watching the last couple of weeks unfold. Is this Tep letting football guys do football things and getting out of the way? Is he still behind the scenes and calling some shots? And he'll reemerge sometime in the not too distant future. Don't know. But I hope it's the fact that he's learning, because that might mean some brighter days ahead.
Maybe. And this is the part that it pains me not to be in that market from time to time, because I feel like I could get a better sense of what's going on in that building, which is why I text you, why I listen to your show when I'm going on my dumb mental health walks and whatnot in the afternoon.
I love your text. Your text brighten my day in the afternoon.
Yes, I'll give you a live. I was going to say, all of my radio friends love it when I text them in the middle of the show with like. No, but anyway,
you waited all those years for that, sir.
I did. I've earned this time. I get to air check other shows now. I'm very excited about that. Maybe I should be a consultant.
I get a thrill out of it too. I feel bad though. I'll text West Durham during a game, and I'm like, he probably, I don't know if he hates this or he loves this right now, but he's getting it anyway.
Wes will text in the middle of a commercial break.
Yeah.
He's a professional. He's a total professional. No, what I'm getting at is that I feel like somebody has to be in that building, in a meeting, or around the phone to make sure that they go, no, that messaging no longer works, right? Like when the gambling rollout happened, and there was, I think, the NFL Network, or who was it? It was Up and Adams. Kay Adams was there at Bank of America Stadium, and they were talking to Nicole Tepper. I understand why they were talking to Nicole Tepper, because it was from the business perspective of what's going on with the Carolina Panthers. But they keep going to look at all the concerts we've brought here, and MLS. Like, no, nobody gives a shit about that. They want a winning football team. Even Luke Combs, who you brought to that building and you sold out, hates the fact that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing as an owner, and that is putting a winning football product out on the football field. And I feel like sometimes either he doesn't have anybody around him to do that, or they've gotten rid of all the people who could have done that. It's one or the other.
Yeah, the Up and Adams appearance I thought was funny, because as soon as she said that in that interview about the 40 ticketed events, people started crushing her online. And
of course,
I understood it. I mean, we all understood it, but I was just laughing. I'm going on to the air chuckling about it, and I was like, what did you expect them to do? They don't have any football accomplishments to tout. So unless she's going to brag about giving away backpacks to kids in the city, which is a great thing, but I don't know what else she's pivoting to answer the question. So, as far as that stuff, I mean, listen, he's not well liked. She's not well liked right now. And it's because of what you just said, the perception that they care more about opening up new revenue streams than they do about winning football games, even though that's their biggest and most important asset to the city. I would challenge that. I think it matters to him greatly to win football games. Now, everybody's got their own motivations for things. Diehard Panthers fans who've been here since the beginning, they just love the team. They want a title. They want Panther wins on Sunday. Winning is obviously going to pad his bottom line. I mean, he's going to make a lot more money if they win than if they lose, and he's still making a lot of money as is, so he's fine. But, it's not trending well for him, and it hasn't been for some time. The best thing he can do is to step back and hope that the guys that he's empowered here can get them back to respectability, so that people will at the very least leave him alone, and possibly in the not too distant future, start to change the perception of himself around here. But, you've got a stadium conversation coming up. I'm sure you just saw what happened in Kansas City yesterday. So that'll make things interesting. And, there's the lingering bitterness from Rock Hill and, all sorts of things. I mean, I will say Charlotte FC has been a smash hit success here in Charlotte, but in every conceivable way. And I do think they built some goodwill there. But back to your original point, man, people just care far more about the Carolina Panthers. And until that's fixed, he's not going to get full credit for anything.
They have a classic success story in the soccer because of the failures of the Panthers.
Yes.
We've seen this here in this market. Forever, our former employer tried to make college baseball a thing, and it became a thing when the Carolina Hurricanes weren't in the playoffs and weren't relevant. And now that the Hurricanes are relevant, it's like, who talks about college baseball?
Nobody talks about college
baseball. I still
baseball.
Talk about it from time to time.
Oh, I'm not saying there's not fans.
Care about it.
I'm not saying there's not fans,
right?
But you know what's occupying everybody's mind?
Yeah, right now
the Canes.
Right now it's freaking
it's the Wolf
basketball, right?
Yes,
and that's why I'm a little bit worried about the Canes, but I think the Canes are going to be fine.
Yeah, the Canes will be fine
in what they've done. But I laugh. Like, don't ever forget, we have Carolina Cobras paraphernalia in here. That first year when the Canes were not good and not in the playoffs, they sold out that building.
Yeah.
So that's what the soccer team is getting the bounce from. Oh, the Panthers stink, but I still want to go to the stadium and do things.
To
right?
your point, and we'll wrap the conversation on this with Cal Bailey, WFNZ.
But let's not give this guy credit. We're like, oh, what a soccer genius.
To your point about the soccer thing, how people are just desperate for something to be positive about. Hey, remember when the Hornets had a moment, Kyle?
Listen, man, I do 82 Hornets pregame shows a year. I remember all of the moments.
Remember post trade?
Do you really?
Yeah, he does all the. Yeah.
God bless you, sir.
Yeah. It's brutal. It's brutal for Cal. But after the trade deadline, they had like that dead cat bounce, and people were like, "Look at the Hornets go!" People were hype about it.
They went 500 in a
yes.
Well,
Now they're whatever.
Opening night, they beat the Hawks, LaMelo, and Mark Williams, Brandon. I mean, everybody looks fantastic. We're going back to the playoffs. We look up in a couple of months, and they've won 18 games. It's just been it's been a ride, boys. I'll tell you what. But no, I will push back a little bit, Julio, because they did their market research, and I wasn't skeptical per se, but some of the projections for numbers that I saw years ago, I thought were a little bit lofty. And they've surpassed every metric and every single match for the last couple of years. That's not going away.
Okay.
It's almost its own standalone entity at this point. And it's both Tepper Sports and Entertainment, but there's of course a massive Hispanic community here in Charlotte that has really attached itself to that product right away. They love it, and the atmosphere is incredible. So I will say, look, again, the Panthers are the most important asset. They're the most important thing they do, but man, Charlotte FC has been incredible in every conceivable way. So I got to give them a lot of credit.
Cal Bailey, WFNZ, out in Charlotte. We appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of your soggy morning, your moment of sanity before you go back to being a dad. Hey, look, man, I've already had a moment today where I had to, drop ship a trombone in record time, breaking several traffic laws. So I totally understand. It's just one of those mornings, man.
I look forward to those days. I mean, I don't wish away time by any stretch of the imagination, but I look forward to being able to have conversations as opposed to explaining to a 19-month-old why he shouldn't scream in his infant sister's face.
All right, Cal. I'll talk to you later, man.
All right, fellas. Be good.